Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, as always, Brian McNichol.
Good morning. Hello, deplorables, drags, despicables, chaps, Neanderthals, semi-fascists, cult members, and dog-faced soldiers.
All right, maybe throw that in there. All right, so I'm coming to you from Phoenix, Arizona, where I have been in the Phoenix Mesa area since Friday? No, Saturday. Took in one spring training game on Saturday, and Spencer and I hope to maybe get another one in on Thursday before I leave on Friday. So
okay. Who'd you go see?
Have you done spring training before?
Yeah. In Arizona. I've never done it in Florida, where my team is.
Yeah. Well, you could say my team too, I guess, right? I mean, they share the facility.
Yeah, they share the facility. That's right.
Yeah.
So who'd you go see? What game? Who'd you go to see?
We went to Tempe Diablo Stadium, and so the Angels and Rangers were playing.
Oh, okay, pretty cool.
So
I've seen that. That was right on the highway, right? That stadium.
It is exactly
like a big intersection of.
Yeah, you can see the traffic going by and everything like that. It's interesting, boy. Though I will say, I mean, as somebody who remembers just reading about spring training 50 years ago and kind of how simple it was and things like that. I mean, this is a big business.
Yeah, it's a huge business.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a big like tug of war between Florida and Arizona for the teams too, which Arizona has sort of pulled ahead in the last few years. So that's part of the reason the Nats and the Astros are sharing that facility in Palm Beach is because Florida hustled up and got that done to try to keep from losing teams.
Yeah. So the Cactus League is getting ahead of. Is it still the Citrus League or the Grapefruit League? Is it Grapefruit?
Grapefruit, yeah.
Grapefruit, yeah. It was some citrus. I don't know. It's been a while. Yeah. No, it's interesting. I mean, the stadium. I'm like, wow. Okay. Well, that's pretty cool. It was a Saturday afternoon, and there, I mean, we got seats. There weren't a whole lot of seats left, I think, at the time either. I mean, they pretty much packed that stadium. I thought it was cute to watch all the families sitting on the lawn on their blankets, and the kids just yelling at the players, "Throw me that ball!"
That's right. It's the closest you get to the players.
Right. It is. It's really nice. I mean, it does kind of remind me of going to a minor league game, but you're kind of a step above because you actually have major leaguers playing in the game. The thing about that stadium is that when you're sitting as far as we were in, we're down third baseline, so they don't put the speakers that far down. So when they're announcing players and things like that, I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah,
it's like
Charlie Brown speech.
I had no idea who was coming to bat half the time. Well, I guess they do show it up on the screen once in a while, but I do kind of miss the you get a little instant replay because they don't do that there. It's like I wanted to see what just happened and whatnot, but I'm more of a being an old DC guy. I'm kind of a Rangers fan too, so seeing them beat the home team was good.
Okay.
But it's interesting because it's nestled in. I mean, it's really kind of in an industrial business area. So Saturday you can park pretty much anywhere. But I don't know what happens when they have the weekday games if they Monday through Friday. But spring training is almost over, right?
That's right. Just about. I guess we're about 8 days from them starting for good, right?
Yeah.
Next Thursday or Friday.
So, how's the weather been back home? I might as well get a weather report.
So it's going to be nice today. It's already in the mid-50s, supposed to be in the mid-60s, up around 73 or 4 tomorrow. So, but then the rain comes and it cools back down. So we're still pulling out of it. Not like you guys over there.
Yeah, but it's been. I went up to northern tip of Phoenix to visit an old friend of mine, and she's been living there for about 10 years, and she used to live in Silver Spring and Rockville and things like that, so she knows the East Coast pretty well. and but and she just said, for Arizona, she says it's been like 10 or 15 degrees cooler than, than normal there. I mean, today it might get to, I don't know if it's even going to, I guess it's going to be around 60 today, and it's got some breeze. So it feels a little chilly. We haven't really had, I mean, when we went on Saturday, I think it was in the 70s, but they've been closer to mid to lower 60s rather than upper 60s or low 70s. So it's definitely been cooler than it probably would have been. And we had rain yesterday when we were up in New River, up in Arizona. It apparently didn't rain as much down here in Mesa and Phoenix, but they're getting, they've had more. This is the most rain I think they've had at this time by this time of the year since like 2016. I mean, it's good for them, but it's unusual for them. So they've had wetter, cooler weather. But the West has had a lot of rain, a lot of stuff going on. Flagstaff has had a ton of snow up north, and my brother-in-law flew down from Utah. At least he gets away from the snow because when he headed back the other night, he was headed right back to another snowy situation.
Wow. Yeah.
So, but I come back on. Hopefully, the weather will be halfway. It's getting there. By the time I get back on Friday. All right, news. Well, just for the daily count, Ukraine invasion 392. So just after we have, well, we won't be. I can't do the show next week because I've got another church thing. But by the time we meet again, we'll be over 400 days, which is still pretty amazing. But what do you think about this whole thing about the International Criminal Court and this arrest warrant on Putin? I mean, does the ICC? I mean, does it carry any weight?
Well, it is the international community saying, they recognize that there's a lot of atrocities going on here that the Russians have directed. Either they are telling them to do it or they don't care if they do it. We sort of have some standards for how you're supposed to fight wars, and the Russians make a point of not adhering to those standards. They make a point of being cruel and, inflicting psychological damage. It's part of their strategy. So, that's what he's in trouble for. Is he going to get arrested, by someone from the ICC or hauled before the court? I doubt it seriously, but it is the world that's not aligned with him saying that, it's one thing to try to conquer a country, but in addition to that, the way you're carrying this out is unacceptable. So it is kind of there's some significance to the statement, but there's, it's no sweat off of Putin, right? He doesn't care.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I mean, in terms of you're making a statement, you're putting it down. It's going to be on the record that this arrest warrant has been issued, and they found that what he's done in Ukraine is really an atrocity, and so he deserves to be punished for it. But I mean, wouldn't he have to?
So people understand though. The U.S. is not a signatory to the Treaty of Rome that established the ICC. So,
right.
We're not part of this. We're not part of this court.
Right. So would he have to step foot in an area that in a country that recognizes that to be arrested? I mean, then law enforcement would then enforce it.
Then it's up to law enforcement. Then it's like, if he goes on a state visit to France, right? You see France busting him, I mean, they could, but I doubt they would. I think the nukes protect you from the ICC pretty effectively. They might not keep the Americans at bay, but they will keep the ICC off your front porch.
Yeah, so I'll be at least it's down there on the record. Which actually, then you just mentioned France, and I do want to throw this in because we talked about this before about this whole there was lots of protests about Macron trying to get this retirement age lifted by a whole 2 years. I mean, there were over 7 tons of garbage in the street. The garbage workers went on strike, and there's been all these protests and all these kind of things. So he signed off on this without any vote in the legislature, though. I mean, is that kind of an executive?
The legislature somehow.
Yeah. So it's in effect. I mean, it hasn't solved the situation from the protest side, I guess, but it just amazes me. I guess Europeans and the French, They love, they want things the way they were. They don't want these things to change. Their benefits are very good. The pensions are very cushy, and they can go when they can go have all their vacations and everything like that, and live the life that they plan. And by raising this a whole 2 years, I mean, even the 2 year thing is such a stopgap measure, for them, isn't it? I mean, it'll help, but with 1.7, when they predict that there'll be 1.7 workers to support every pensioner kind of thing going down the line, and that's probably going to continue to shrink even after that. And this is still a few years down the line. They're facing a financial crisis in their pension system, which is seemingly happening around a lot of other countries are facing as well. And if you don't meet reality, benefits will get cut eventually anyway, because there just won't be any money to pay them. So try to fix it now and say, look, work a little longer and we can keep this going a little bit. He's not trying to cut them off at the knees.
Well, so a few things on this. First of all, we get into the trap in the United States. We talk about this, about saying, well, he's trying to raise it from 62 to 64. And, ours is 65, and it's set up to, I guess, 68.
Well, yeah, I mean, my full retirement age is, what is it, 66 in 10 months?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's less than ours, but that's not really the standard to judge it by, right?
Right.
I mean, that just happens to be what we chose and what they chose, and we, chose it for two different, under different sets of circumstances, different, ways of choosing things and different circumstances. So that's part of it. Part of it is, we keep going, we keep having this discussion in the United States politically. The Biden accuses the Republicans of wanting to, do stuff to Social Security and Medicaid, Medicare, and they deny it. We are not doing that. That's not us, man. That's all wrong, And you're like, well, it was in Rick Scott's plan. It's not us. That's not us, right? So what we need to be saying is, at some point, we don't really have a plan right now, but there needs to be a plan, right? Because it's what we have now is unsustainable. I think most people know that. I think we've talked about this before. Brian Riedel, who's now at Manhattan Institute, says that by 2056, we will be paying nothing but interest, not any principal, nothing but interest on the federal debt. Every other thing will be wiped out, right? Defense, all domestic spending, everything wiped out except for interest on the debt. So if we don't want to get into that trap, we are going to have to do something about Medicaid, Medicare. So the French are sort of the tip of the spear on this, and they're trying to take it on, and they're trying to come up with something that's palatable, handleable, right, for the people. And you see political treachery of trying to do these reforms, right? Because it's going to be a problem. The United States, you're going to get a fairly similar reaction, right? The other thing is, though, it's like these tech companies. Elon Musk buys Twitter, right? And he comes in and fires 75 or 80% of the people who work there. Twitter works just fine, right? It didn't ruin Twitter because those people weren't needed, right? The times were good. They had so much money sloshing around that they didn't know what to do with it. So they spent a lot on personnel and perks that they didn't need, right? So now that the belt is being tightened, right, a lot of things can be discarded, right? We're finding out we can do without a lot of these people and a lot of the work they were doing, and still accomplish our task. And that's what's going on in France, is that they have discovered that they were too generous when they were in position to be generous, and now some of the generosity needs to be clawed back, and there's resistance to that. But the fact is, they cannot be that generous anymore. And the people are going to have to give in on this or something else. So you can kind of pick your poison. But most people, when you're 63, you can still work.
Right. I mean, the thing is that when Social Security was established, the lifespan was not.
Everything was different. Like I saw the other day, by the way, because because of the news today, the woman who was in the photo, the iconic photo of Woodstock dancing in the mud, covered mud, right, was on the front of the magazine. She died the last day or so, right? So it brings that up. So I saw one picture, it was held at something called Yasgar's Farm, right? Up in upstate New York. Yeah, saw a picture of Yasgar, and he was 50 at the time. He was identified in the photo as being 50, but he looked 75, right? Now, today, like 50-year-olds look young. I mean, now that I'm way past 50, they look like little kids, But seriously, most people 50 now do not look that old, right? It's the whole thing is changing. Like we look younger than my dad did at 60, right? And so just the way we're eating better, we're exercising better, but more of us don't work outdoors in the sun all our lives, which takes years off your life, ruins your skin, all this kind of stuff. So that you have a lot of these things going on, these mitigating factors, and we are building people who can live longer. So if we're going to build them who live longer, we have to come up with a sustainable way to handle this.
Yeah, I mean that's why Social Security, not like I think it's a great program. I understand, the whole nature of what they did there, but 65, was a reasonable thing, when it was established, I guess, in terms of, because that was how many people did they expect to live to 65 back then?
Right. And you were supported by what, 36 workers when it started. It was 36 workers for each person.
Right. Yeah.
And then it went to 27, and now it's a little below 2.
Right.
It's headed down to about 1.45 in the next 3 or 4 years, which is, when you get to that point, then you're getting where it's dangerous, where you can't really do it. Right.
Yeah, and people don't understand that. I mean, and the French have got, just like a lot of other Europeans. I mean, it's just, they've had shorter work weeks than we've had here traditionally.
Long vacations.
They have had long vacation periods and things like that, but they are adverse. I mean, anytime somebody tries to, I think they've tried this in France too, to try to lengthen the work week, and they got big, massive protests about that in the past. I mean, the thing about this that France just continues to get at me is just that Macron ran on this. He put this out front. I mean, in his campaign, he said he was going to do this. Yeah. And maybe maybe people, they didn't believe him, or it's just that the left is out there saying, we're not going to let this happen. But now that it's happening, they're going, cuckoo. But they're not being realistic about what the fallout will be in the end.
Yeah,
and 62. I mean, come on. I mean, these retirement ages. I don't really fuss about not being able to collect my first Social Security. Should I opt in at that point at 66 and 10? Because I'm like, I'm probably still going to be healthy and I can figure this out. And if I hang on a little longer, the payout will increase anyway. They give you an incentive to hold out a little longer. But look at my mother. I mean, when my father died, he was 82, but he had already made the move to where he assigned. He took less in benefits while he was alive to increase the benefits to my mother. He basically bet that my mother would outlive him, and she outlived him by 13 years almost.
Right. Yeah.
Talk about a drain on Medicare and Social Security.
That's right. I mean, a lot of those things are like that.
Yeah, so we'll continue to see it. Plus the French, 42 different pension systems, in France. So you can't have that. I mean, today's world can't do this.
Right.
But you mentioned Twitter as an example. We're seeing now the tech fallout where there's this massive layoffs because they went overboard and hired way too many people during the pandemic. And they had money sloshing around. They were getting all kinds of business and making all kinds of money, and they got fat and happy. And now things are not as good, and they're cutting back. But yeah, Twitter's not broken. They've got to solve their corporate advertising thing when people fled after some of Musk's remarks. But the basic model of Twitter is still there. It runs. And it runs with 75 or 80% fewer people.
Yeah,
so
and the threatened exit didn't really materialize.
Right.
The leftists said, we're going to Mastodon or whatever. But, because you think about like how social media works, X percent of the audience wants to always be agreed with on both sides, right? Leftists, they don't want to hear it from anybody on the right, they don't want to hear it from anybody on the left. But most people like the exchange. They like to test their ideas and their theories and what the talking points they think resonate. So those people are not leaving, right? And I think something like 45% of Twitter's users say that they use it as a news source. It's their primary news source. So they're not leaving. They don't care, how many people Elon Musk fired. They couldn't care less. They saw that as, flab anyway.
Right. I mean, the thing is that, the liberals who are outraged, that's what they do. They Twitter is their news source. The media uses Twitter as a news source.
That's right.
So
the media puts its news on Twitter, right?
Yeah,
it publishes on Twitter.
Right. They weren't going anywhere, no matter what. I mean, it would have to have been something extremely egregious for them to do this, but they didn't. There wasn't a viable alternative. I mean, Mastodon was not going to cut it for them. I mean, I think some people fled to Mastodon. They may have stuck around, but a lot of people this isn't going to work. It's a completely different animal, and the Twitter universe is where that whole ecosystem there is where things work the best for them. So, yeah, it's an interesting thing to kind of see how this is all developing. I'm sure you have lots of opinions about this. On Trump and what's going on here, the hush money thing, and did he mislead his lawyers? Did he cover things up? I mean, why don't you give us the lay of the land here and your thoughts about what's going on here?
So apparently they told Trump to expect to be arrested on Tuesday, yesterday. And so, Trump's thing was like, this is not fair. And, we should protest this and we should make a big deal out of this. And it's a political persecution. And a lot of America must have agreed because it looks like the DA is backed up, and he may not charge Trump at all now. They called another witness. They have yet another witness today before the grand jury who are supposedly exculpatory witnesses. So it looks like Alvin Bragg is looking for a soft place to land. I think that they had to be a little surprised by the pushback on this, right? Because it came from both sides. There were even Democrats saying, the Washington Post editorial page, op-ed page is saying, this case looks pretty weak. And, Trump's not above the law, but he's not below the law either. But we don't think it's a good excuse to protest. Okay, all right, whatever. Right. I know you got to say something on their behalf. Right. But I mean, they've made pretty clear that they don't think much of this. And it looks like he's trying to conjoin two laws to add up, 2 misdemeanors to add up to a felony or something. So he has something to charge him with. What they want is the perp walk. They want Trump in handcuffs and all this and that and the other. I don't think the Secret Service will let him be handcuffed. Right. I think that's a security risk. And they won't do it. So I don't think you're going to get that. They want his fingerprints or whatever, but they may not even get that. It's beginning to look like, and Congress has made some noise, and Republicans in the House made some noise about hauling the prosecutor before committee to explain what he's doing. I don't think that's a great idea for the Congress to be, involving itself in local prosecution decisions, prosecutorial, and they have every right to get up on the floor and give speeches and say they think it's terrible. But, if this is what this guy wants to do, it's what he's free to do. So, it'll be interesting to see. I get the feeling that they are trying to crawfish on this now, that the reaction scared the heck out of the Democrats. I guess you saw Elon Musk came out and said if they actually do go through and arresting Trump for this, he will win in a landslide. There's some of the polling this week after all this started to happen. Like in one, he was up on DeSantis 61 to 23 or something, or 63 to 21. It was, more than 40 points. So, he's opened some fairly wide leads in the polling. It's early yet, so, that can all be undone. But, right now it looks like that, you're just solidifying him as the Republican nominee, which I don't think. I think their intention was just the opposite, right? To have him caught up in enough investigations and hassle litigation, basically, to where he can't function as candidate. And it looks like it's, you're actually fueling his fire.
Yeah, because Biden is going to be, running again. He'll be a weak candidate. the
Yeah,
track record
much
is
more compromised by scandal by then, right? It's starting.
right.
You're at the start of a bunch of scandals on a lot of levels that are really going to hurt him. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, I mean, and I mean, how do voters have any real confidence in another Biden Harris, term? That it's more frightening, I think, even to some Democrats, is because there's been all kinds of rumors for a while, and they continue to seem to grow and grow
Yeah, they
about
did.
that. So, go
Yeah.
ahead.
So you have, I mean, now you're looking at, I guess that they're starting to unearth court documents about, from Ashley Biden, her diary, right? That case is starting to become public, and it appears like it was pretty systematic that he was the way he went about abusing her, right? That it was on the regular, and like she was starting to try to like take her showers only late at night, so hopefully he wouldn't be around, and she was like devising strategies to get away from this creep, right? So I mean, that's at some point that's got to catch up to you. There's this $3 million in payments that got divided among the Bidens, and that the House Oversight Committee is uncovered, and the guy says he has at least 17 more checks like that. So it looks like right now our president is making more money from our chief geopolitical adversary than he is from us, right? Which that'll bring about some questions too, right? You have the Russia-China thing is collapsing on him, right? Russia and China are joining forces. They're talking about, ending the dollar as the key currency that everything's pegged to, make it the yuan instead, which is, holds little value. I mean, it would be a terrible move for them, and it'd be inflationary for them, but it would cut out a key source of influence the U.S. has in the world. Zelensky has, wants a peace deal, right? He's decided he wants a peace deal. He hasn't asked us. We've paid all this money and sent all these arms and basically kept him afloat in this war. But now that he wants to settle things up, he didn't ask us for help. He asked Xi Jinping for help to negotiate a peace deal with him and the Russians. That's part of what Xi is doing in Moscow now, is setting the stage for that. So now, the thing that American foreign policy has been designed to prevent for about 70 years, which is, to keep our currency as the reserve currency and to keep China and Russia from joining forces against us. In a matter of days, all that's about to happen, and it's all laid at the feet of the incompetence of the Biden foreign policy team. I mean, we are governed, and I know John Cunningham, who watches our show, keeps up with this. We're down to about 600 more days of the Biden presidency, and I'm not sure we make it. Right? It's the way things are tumbling now. They're going to tighten 50 basis points today. The credit, right? The Federal Reserve. Is that right? Is that what you've heard?
That's part of the speculation here, is that after the whole banking problem, is that where does the Fed go? Does the Fed go with 25? Do they go to the economy? There's some sectors that are still hot, and so look, 50 wouldn't be unreasonable. But with the banking problem, they could just stand pat and not do anything. The market
That's a signal they're worried about the banks, which is, its own problem, right?
Yeah.
But if you don't go through with your plan, you're sort of admitting that this is such a big problem you can't go through with your plan.
Yeah, so it's one of those things, is that I think the markets had been steaming ahead, thinking that the Fed is going to have to pull back, at least for this meeting, because of the whole SVB and First Republic and Signature Bank and all these things that have been problematic, and then see where it goes from there. But it's I don't know. I mean, sometimes the Fed will surprise. The Fed is surprised to the upside sometimes, and they surprise to the downside sometimes. And Jay Powell will do with his with those guys of what they can, but the Fed has been playing catch up. They didn't take action when they should have taken action initially, and so we kind of put us into this problem that we have now anyway. With rates. It was interesting too, because the rising interest rates have maybe finally now started to have an effect in certain areas. I mean, home buying has been trickling off, but even when mortgage rates were going up, people were still buying. But now they kind of reached a level where it's like, okay, we can't, who can afford this? But I saw a report that denials for car loans is high. I don't know if it's a record high, but it's higher than it's been in quite a while. It's like 9% now, and it was, I think, back in October was about 6%. I mean, people are making, cars are more expensive thanks to Biden inflation and some things. People are putting out, they're setting up car payments of $1,000 or more. How many people can afford $1,000 car payment?
Right.
For 6 or 7 years? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and the existing homes sales are starting to creep back up again, which means put a price pressure on that and make renting a little more affordable.
Right. I mean, Spencer here, I mean, they looked at a lot of different options, but I think the rent increase for the next year is about 5%. So they thought that was worthwhile while they mull their options and buy some time, to figure out what they want to do, since he's got a remote job, and the organization is based in Pennsylvania, but the organization has a slew of remote workers. But it's still less costly for him, I think, overall, by staying here than by moving back east, under the current circumstances.
Yeah.
But for people who, when my son and my daughter-in-law, when they bought the other one, when Stephen bought their home, not within just a few months after getting married, which was about a year and a half ago, I thought, boy, that was a big leap. But I think the interest rates were still in the 3% range.
Yeah.
So despite that, you kind of push yourself to the limit to get the house. There's no way they could afford a house today because of interest rates. So
that's what drove up those sales in February, is people anticipating it's about to get worse.
Yeah. And so we have this continual thing. I mean, not really quite sure how much the banking, issue, how long that's going to really overhang and cause the Fed to kind of, tiptoe a little bit. But, before that, the expectation was that, rates were going to continue marching higher this year, and maybe in 2024, they could start taking their foot off the gas and start, reducing interest rates. Good for savers in the sense of, saving, you could probably get a CD for 5% or more. If you wait, probably get a little bit better. But of course, you're still dealing with inflation, so you're still losing money. You're just losing less if you're getting 5% than if you're getting 2%.
Right.
And the administration hasn't solved the inflation puzzle.
No, it's down to about 4.5, which is still more than 3 times what it was when Trump took office.
And I saw something too. I think in Great Britain, I think it's spiked up. I think to over 10%.
Spike here next month or so.
Yeah, so it's the Biden administration is far from being out of the woods on this, and gas prices. Gas price here, the street price, if you're not at Costco, as you drive around the Phoenix, Mesa, Tempe area, it's $4.49 for a gallon of regular.
Yeah.
You'd almost think you're in California, which I'm sure has got to be much higher. The friend I visited yesterday, she said that she went to Utah for a week, and this was fairly recently. And she said when she came back, the price of gas had spiked like 30 to 40 cents.
Yeah.
And you just don't really know. Some areas it may stabilize and go up a little bit. Other areas it'll spike up for whatever reason it is. This administration doesn't know what it's doing. They don't know how to handle it.
Broadly incompetent. They're in all phases.
Yeah, it just continues to be, and the more they continue to keep KJP, as press secretary.
I was thinking about that earlier. So it's sort of a new strategy in press secretaries, is rather than have somebody who could dazzle them with their brilliance, Like put somebody out there who they're going to take a lot of L's, right? But they can claim, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, no one thinks that she is in the highest level of conversations with the president, right? I mean, they're giving her that book, and they're saying, they ask that question, you turn to page 12 and you read precisely what's on page 12, right? Do not vary from what's on page 12. So, that's what she does. She opens that book and she reads what they prepared for her for that question. So, and then you're able to sort of say, I don't really know what they're thinking. I'm just an idiot who reads out of the book, right? And you're sort of the person who's out there with the reporters is sort of not responsible for the administration's message. I mean, that's kind of where it's going. So it's almost like I don't want to say dumber, but more obtuse the better, right? Because if she's knowledgeable, if she seems like she has a grip on what they're doing, she's more responsible for explaining their actions, right? All she knows is, I'll get back to you on that, or I'm flipping that book and reading what they told me to say.
Yeah, it leaves White House watchers wanting Jen Psaki back more so than ever.
Which is rough, man.
Yeah, I mean,
pretty bad at this too.
Yeah,
I mean, it's one thing. It's like I hear people say that, right? I hear that a lot, and it occurs to me. It's like when Jim Psaki was there, like we were all like, that's one of the worst press secretaries ever. I mean, not just among Democrats, but ever, any of them. And then they put her in, and like Jim Psaki was a brilliant press secretary, right? Just because they put in someone who is way worse.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I mean, they'd have, in order, if they ever get frustrated enough, they need to move, KJP out. I mean, they've got to find something good for her to do, or they have to convince her to leave and do something else. Maybe somebody gives her a TV deal like, MSNBC with Psaki, because as a Black lesbian female, you can't fire her. I mean,
you reach a point though on those deals, she's got to give you a reason, right? You can't just say, okay, we've had enough, we're moving on. But but I mean, they're reaching a level where they're getting hit with incompetence problems on all sides, right? Obviously, the guy doing immigration doesn't know what he's doing. The guy at the foreign relations team, national security teams are brutal, right? They're just brutal, among the worst we've ever had, right? So at some point, you're like, I don't care what you look like. We got to get somebody in here who can do the job. So I think we're getting to the point where people are fed up with even their side is fed up with some of the checkers,
She needs to be some kind of a firewall. I mean, it's fine to stonewall the press because the press secretaries have done that for a long time and everything like this. But her sheer incompetence, I mean, she fails at all aspects of this.
Yeah, she can't even stonewall.
That's right.
That's rough.
It is pretty bad. I mean, that's
exactly you have to be a stonewall.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Is like, one of the basic things is that you should be able to stonewall the press, and she can't do it. She's so incompetent, she can't even do it. That is a pretty sad commentary on things. I wanted to ask you about this thing about Biden signing this bill, he was declassifying the core COVID origins intel.
Right. Well, I think we're developing intel, and our departments we're speaking out. And I'm not sure if that was coordinated by the White House or not, but Department of Energy, Department of State, and maybe one more came out and said that our understanding is that it started in a lab, right? It was a lab leak. They didn't do it on purpose, but it leaked from the lab. The wet market story was never really viable to most people anyway, especially that like the chemicals involved did not come from that area. The bats of that area would not have given you those chemicals. So, it kind of never held water anyway for most people. There's a few people out there who they swear by that theory. It's good for him that he's doing it. I think it's kind of like the barn, the cow is out of the barn and you're shutting the door, so it is what it is. I think more important thing that Biden did this week was sign the deal to make it legal to insist on DEI requirements for investment, right? And there was a move to throw off that thing, and now it's like, people investing in pension funds, big pension funds, multi-employer pension funds. When you're investing, they now can say that you should prefer DEI approved investments, which is a big way of getting left wing kookery into investments, right? You're forcing dollars into businesses supporting a left wing agenda. I don't think it's constitutional. I think it will be because for one thing, they cannot demonstrate a line between this and increasing the value of the stocks, right? So since you're not actually increasing the value of the company by embracing DEI, it can't be required of the company, right? You have a fiduciary interest in trying to maximize profits for the shareholders. So I thought that was a big one, and I think it will have to be unraveled in the courts. But you have to wait till someone's harmed and sues and brings it. So, but that one's
I mean the whole. I mean, we've seen just particularly since the Biden administration came in that the big push on DEI and investments, the big push on ESG and investments, and all this kind of stuff, all this left wing kookery, I guess, is that gets in there, and a lot of things about these is that these are very subjective measures, right? I mean, there's not really a lot of metrics in terms of this is what qualifies as diversity, or this is what qualifies as inclusion, and all of this kind of stuff. I mean, the pushback from conservatives, at least on the ESG side of it, has been big enough and loud enough, including that people that I used to work for. It's just that I think it was Citibank had issued a notice or something that a paper warning companies that the conservatives that the anti ESG movement is actually can be considered a business risk for corporations now and things like that, because this was not something I don't think they didn't expect this to become like it is. I mean, with Vivek Ramaswamy, when he jumps in with his huge ETF on energy, but he talks about the evils of BlackRock and all these kind of things, and he's a guy who's well known in the investment community, and he starts railing about it, and there's a decent amount of money at the get-go behind it. People start paying attention. All of a sudden, it's not these small little outfits that are pushing it, but now you've got like $3 billion to start with going after it. Plus, it starts to wake some of these people up, and thinking like the liberals think that they can steamroll and just throw all this garbage into the investing platforms, and now they're like, oh well, maybe we can't get it there. And as you said, where's the stock measurement value with this? How do you really it's hard for them to do that. And we've seen with BP, which is tried to be one of the greenest companies for a long time in the gas industry. That last quarterly report, they said they're pulling back on some of their green and energy stuff because they can't make any money off of it,
right?
Which the liberals don't want to talk about, is that there's very little money in it unless the government's giving you the money for it.
Right. So the other thing that's going on in the last couple of weeks is our government has discovered that indeed we do not have near enough energy and we need more. Right. So now they're starting to negotiate on. There's been some pushback on the pipeline rules. Start to negotiate on nuclear again. They have the president approved the Willow project, giant oil drilling project in northern Alaska up near the North Slope. Which just flummoxed the environmentalists, right? They're the greenies. They're all like, that's totally against what we were trying to do. They're trying to hammer out some kind of agreement to get some offshore drilling going again, because the Biden administration, they've realized that the price of gas is not going to come down until you signal pretty strongly that you're serious about reopening domestic exploration. So with this starting to happen, I mean, it looks like the Green New Deal people are out of the box, right? They're not part of it anymore. So you saw yesterday, our friends the IPCC came out with a new report And this report is like most ICC reports. The conclusions of the report and the statement from policymakers are wildly different, right? So what happens is they make these reports, right? And there's the research is all over the place, and the reports take note of that, right? But then they have a statement for policymakers saying, "Oh, all the things we found, here's what policymakers should be thinking about," and that is written by political types, right? So it doesn't hew to scientific findings or the uncertainty of all this science, right? Which most of this science is deeply uncertain, right? You're talking about, the effects of things on the climate, right? Who knows, right? So so what's happening now is they're not, that trust is breaking down, and those things are not taken for granted anymore. So along comes the IPCC, the policymakers to say, hey, wait, we really need this. It's an emergency. And the other people are like, it's not really an emergency.
Yeah. So this will be, I mean, you can see that there's been some bending by the Biden administration. I mean, I think that with the Willow Project, I think they pared back some of the pads or something like that, where they could do certain things, but it wasn't enough to kill the deal. So
went from 8 pads to 6 pads or something like that.
The environmentalists are going totally nuts. I mean, I think they thought they had, Biden in their hip pocket, and that, anything that dealt with fossil fuels would just never get anywhere. But there's a reality that sets in, is that your gas prices are stubbornly high. They're not going down, no matter what.
You're not going to be reelected like this.
Yeah, you're right. You're not. You can't win re-election. You can lie to the people and say that your gas prices are coming down, when you look at what they were a year ago, but not compared to what they were when you came into office, and things like that.
Although you did see Biden said last week that hey, it was $5 a gallon when I took office. Like, nobody. It was $2 a gallon. 5 was turned upside down into 2.
I wonder sometimes with that too. It's just that, is that a thing for the Biden, where they're like, okay, look, if we say it was $5 when we came in, people, our faithful followers will actually believe it. If you say it enough,
nobody takes its facts. That's
and
right.
Nobody's going to go back there and look at it. But when you do look at it, you're like, no.
That's like, I don't know if you saw, there's a thing in the Washington Post this morning about Sally Jenkins about Half Moon Bay, California, and how the beach is receding. Well, I mean, if you know anything about beaches, like if you don't put some sand on them every year, your beach is going to recede, right? Beaches don't, that's not a constant thing, right? The water does things to the beach, right? Things happen. And she's like, oh, it's terrible, global warming, this and that. And like the climate people, the Tony Hellers, Mark Moranos are just smoking her on Twitter, just destroying her.
I mean, Ocean City, Maryland has been replenishing the beach for decades.
You have to replenish the beach. So does the Delaware beaches. The Delaware, it's a big state agency that goes up and down boring sand. It's just part of it. It's part of, being in the beach business, is you will replenish the sand because the sand will wash away.
Yeah, I mean, the tide rolls in and it pulls out. And when it rolls out, it pulls out.
And you 6 months of the year, you're not looking at it at all, right?
Right.
Right? November, December, right? You're not looking at that.
Right. Yeah. So that's interesting to note that. Talk about San Francisco a little bit here. These guys, I don't even know what to say. I mean, this draft, bill or whatever they're calling it, they throw out reparations, with this thing. Okay, everybody, every black citizen or something, should get $5 million, lump sum payment, and then they want to have like a 250-year annual income of like $97,000 a year. But I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the proposal, and they have to figure out what they're going to accept. But isn't there a thing there too? It's like, you potentially qualify if you've been incarcerated.
Yeah.
Because you were a victim of the police program of drug
white supremacy put you in jail for murder.
And where are they getting the money? Where are they going to get the money?
Right. That's what that's the other thing, is like they're broke, they're beyond broke, and They're going to give everybody. It's not just $5 million. It's also, like you say, right at $100,000 a year of pay.
Yeah.
Also, all your debts, your mortgage, your car note, your taxes, any back taxes you may owe, all taken care of, all wiped off the books. No tax on the $5 million, no tax on the 100,000. All that squared away by the city. So you're talking about, $7 million a person, right? And it's not a family; it's a person. So, like, dad and mom both get it, and so. I don't think it's remotely viable, but it's a local government wanting to deal with what it considers to be a local problem. So, let them have at it. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, there. I think is it Sheila Jackson Lee? Does she have she has a reparation bill or something like that? She's trying to get through Congress, and
yeah,
that hasn't had a whole lot of success there either. I don't know that the president's really all behind that.
Right, or the caucus, the Democrats caucus, not behind that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I think I think that goes against the heart of American jurisprudence, right? Because American jurisprudence is, the root of it is you're responsible for you, right? You're not responsible for other people. Your patronage, where you were born and who you were born to doesn't matter. What matters is whether you did the crime, right? And so now you're saying, those things do matter, right? If you're a certain color, we owe you money, right? The people who did not wrong you did not wrong these people, owe these people, and these people were not themselves wrong. Right now, I guess I saw yesterday, and I was trying to, because I look hard for people defending this. Like the other one I'm looking hard for is the parents who take their kids to the drag shows. I would like to see a parent be interviewed. Yeah, this is a good idea. I did this, and here's why. Because I'd like to hear, what the heck are you thinking when you do that? I'm just curiosity.
Please.
But I want to hear someone come on and say, yeah, this is physically sound thing to do. And we can do that, and it's responsive to the needs of all San Franciscans. It absolves, it addresses guilt that all San Franciscans share. Explain to me how, people alive today who weren't alive then are guilty of doing that thing that was never done in San Francisco, right? There was never, it's a non-slave state, right? That never happened. Okay, the people we're giving the money to were not involved, right? So. How can it be that we owe them money? We didn't do anything that incurs a debt. So, and that's the way American jurisprudence works. So it is kind of another way, it's another attack on our judicial system, on our rule of law, on what is fair and right.
Yeah, I mean, the basic qualification is the color of your skin would get you this money. You don't have to prove anything in general. You're black, you get it. And if they throw conditions like if you were incarcerated because of the drug war or something like that, you'd qualify. Or some of these really kooky kind of things in there. But it is San Francisco. Local jurisdictions have was it Evanston, Illinois, that was doing something about paying certain amount of a mortgage for a certain amount of people or something like that as part of a reparations program. And if they put it in there, they put it in there. They have every right. They can do that as politicians. They get the votes. They can do it, but it doesn't have to make sense. But there's a fast way with this kind of money they're talking about to bankrupt a city. But it's also a headline number. I think it's kind of like multi-million-dollar lawsuits. They're headline numbers. They grab your attention.
Yeah.
But the reality is that if they ever get anything like this done, it'll be a far smaller number if they get anything done at all for that. Just one more thing about San Fran was just when I spotted this thing about, so CNN had a crew going to City Hall. They were going to go and tape. They were going to go and talk to officials about crime in San Francisco. They hired a security guard to watch their vehicle and they still got broken into with the guy there. The guy couldn't stop them fast enough,
Right.
and they ran off with a bunch of equipment and stuff like that. To the where even the reporter, I think she tweeted about this, is like unbelievable about how this
Yeah,
happens.
it was 4 seconds. He said they were there 4 seconds, and all this stuff was gone. They got a license plate off the car. Adios.
Yeah.
So I mean, but that just shows you, like, that city, the government's actual function is not to pay people back for things that happened 100 years before they were born. Government's actual function is to protect property. We protect ourselves. That's what the Second Amendment's for. Government is here to protect property. So if it's not protecting property, it loses legitimacy, right? So why are we paying taxes? Why are we contributing to this? Why are we playing along? Because the thing that they promised to do, they're not doing.
Right. I mean, they've had a problem with the kind of the flash mobs and the smash and grabs, and businesses are closing as a result of that because they're getting no protection from this. And how many times
they won't enforce the law, and the prosecutor won't prosecute it.
Yeah. All right, we need to wrap this up, so let's go with the final words here.
Final words. A couple of things. Let's see. The March Madness is wonderfully chaotic this year, right? You have
men's and women's side.
Men's and women's. Yeah, women's is usually a lot more chalk, right? It's usually a lot more, it goes according to plan. But this year, there's quite a few mix-up. That's a terrific hat.
Spencer said I had to show that.
Good for Spencer. So LSU's women are alive and well. They played 2 good games so far. I guess Purdue was knocked off. Who's the other 1 seed that was knocked off in the first round? Who got knocked off in the first round?
Kansas.
So, those are historical defeats, right? We've had 2 number 2s out, so a lot of the royalty of this tournament is out of it. So part of what's going on is, they basically gave everybody who happened to be in college during COVID an extra year of eligibility. So the transfer rules no longer require you to sit out a year, and they sort of been generous with giving medical red shirts and stuff like that. So what's happening is you have a lot of people all over college basketball, majors and mid-majors, who are 23, 24, 25 years old. Those guys are big. They're grown men at that point, and they're playing good ball. And there's so much talent bottled up in college basketball now that has not left for the pros. Like one of my friends texted me the other day and said Kentucky is starting 3 seniors, right? Because Kentucky has become famous in recent years for they get the best freshmen in the country and they play 1 year and they go pro, right? So this year they had 3 seniors starting in their tournament game. So things are changing in that. It's how you get your players. The distance from the bottom to the top is a lot shorter than it used to be. If you can get those players and keep them on your campus. So yeah, it's been a wildly magical year. Last night, the World Baseball Classic wrapped up. Japan beat the U.S. 3-2. The game finished in classic fashion with Shohei Ohtani of Japan and the California Angels striking out Mike Trout of the U.S. and the California Angels on a slider that there's not a person on earth who could hit that pitch. So.
That was a great WBC.
Great tournament. The whole thing, just thrilling. It's bad for my Astros because it looks like we have lost Jose Altuve for at least a few months, if not the entire season.
All right. Thanks everyone for watching and tuning in today. We appreciate it. As always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And God bless America. We will see you in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, so we'll see you then. And until then, have a good day. Have a good weekend. Enjoy the weather if it's spring where you are.
Yeah. And you have a safe trip back.